It was supposed to be just a quick stop, a peaceful night of rest after a long day of driving through endless highways. But what I experienced in room 217 of that hotel, well, it was far from peaceful. If I had known what waited for me behind that door, I never would have walked inside. Before I go on, I want to ask you something. Have you ever had that feeling? The one where you enter a place and your gut tells you to leave, but you ignore it? Tell me in the comments if you've ever felt something strange like that before. Now back to that hotel. My name is John Miller, and this is the story of the night I should have listened to my instincts. I was on a solo road trip through Colorado, heading towards the Rockies. The sky was turning a deep purple as I drove into a small, forgotten town that seemed stuck in time. Old, faded signs, empty streets, and an unsettling stillness. The kind of town where people stop only because they have to. I was exhausted. The drive had been longer than expected, and I needed a place to crash for the night. That's when I saw it. The Evergreen Hotel. A tall, looming building that looked like it hadn't seen a renovation since the 1950s. But at that point, I didn't care. I just needed a bed. As I walked in, the lobby was eerily quiet, not a single guest in sight. The woman at the front desk, though pleasant, seemed almost out of place, like she didn't belong. But again, I shrugged it off. Just one night, I told myself. One night in this creepy old hotel, and I'll be back on the road tomorrow morning. She handed me the key with a small smile, her voice barely a whisper. Room 217. I made my way through the dimly lit hallways, the smell of mildew and old wood filling the air. Each step I took seemed to echo louder than it should have, as if the walls were absorbing and amplifying the sound. The carpet was threadbare, and the light fixtures flickered just enough to give me the chills. As I approached room 217, something felt off. The air was heavier here, stale, like the room hadn't been opened in a very long time, but I was too tired to think much of it. I slid the key into the lock, and with a creak, the door opened. The room was normal. Nothing special. A queen-sized bed, a small wooden dresser, an old TV sitting on top of it. There was a window, but the curtains were drawn tightly shut. I tossed my bag on the bed, and as I was about to lay down, I noticed something odd. The temperature in the room had dropped significantly. It was warm in the hallway, but in here, I could see my breath. I checked the thermostat, but it was off. Strange, I thought. Maybe it's just an old building, bad insulation. I tried to shrug it off, but that's when I heard it. A faint sound, like someone whispering. At first, I thought it might be coming from the room next door, but as I stood still, listening, I realized it wasn't. The sound was coming from inside the room. I turned around slowly, scanning every corner, but there was no one there. I shook my head, trying to shake off the unease. It's just your imagination, I told myself. You're tired. But the whispers didn't stop. I moved closer to the bed and the sound grew louder. My heart was racing at this point, and I was starting to panic. I threw the bedspread off, checking underneath. Nothing. I checked the closet, the bathroom, empty. The whispers were now a low, chilling murmur, almost like a chant. They were louder, but I still couldn't make out what they were saying. My skin crawled, and I had the overwhelming urge to leave the room. I grabbed my bag and was about to head out when the door slammed shut. It slammed with such force that the whole room seemed to shake. I rushed to the door and tried to pull it open, but it wouldn't budge. It was locked. I fumbled with the lock, trying to twist the knob, but nothing worked. I was trapped. That's when I saw it, the mirror above the dresser. There was something in the reflection, something behind me. My breath hitched as I slowly turned around. There, standing in the corner of the room, was a figure. Pale, almost translucent, its eyes hollow and lifeless. It didn't move. It just stood there, watching me. I froze. My body refused to move as I stared back at it, terror gripping every inch of me. The whispers turned into a scream, a deafening, blood-curdling scream that filled the room, making my ears ring. I dropped to the floor, covering my ears, trying to block out the noise, but it was no use. The sound was everywhere, echoing in my head. And then, everything stopped. Silence. The room was deathly quiet. My heart was pounding in my chest as I slowly looked up. The figure was gone. The door was open. I didn't hesitate. I grabbed my bag and ran. I didn't look back, not once. I rushed down the stairs, through the lobby and out into the cold night air. My car was parked just outside, and I sped away, not caring where I was going, as long as it was far from that hotel. I never found out what happened in room 217. I never went back. But every now and then, I wonder, what if I hadn't left? As I drove away from the Evergreen Hotel, my mind raced with what had just happened. The image of that pale figure haunted me. I couldn't shake the feeling that I had stumbled upon something dark, something that should have remained hidden. I took a deep breath, trying to calm my racing heart, but the memory of that scream echoed in my mind. I decided to pull over at a nearby gas station to gather my thoughts and maybe call someone to share what had happened. The flickering lights of the station felt strangely comforting, a stark contrast to the terror I had just experienced. As I filled my tank, I couldn't help but notice the old man sitting in the corner of the station, his eyes fixated on me. He had a weathered face, lines etched deep from years of hard living, and his clothes were tattered. I felt a chill run down my spine as I realized he had a knowing look, like he understood more than he was letting on. "Everything okay, son?" he asked, his voice gravelly. I hesitated, unsure of how to respond. "Yeah, just had a weird experience at the hotel down the road." His expression shifted, and I could see a flicker of concern in his eyes. "You stayed at the Evergreen, didn't you? Room 217. I nodded, feeling the blood drain from my face. "How did you know?" He leaned closer, his voice dropping to a whisper. "You're not the first to leave that room screaming. People say it's cursed. Those who stay in 217 don't always come out the same. Some don't come out at all." My stomach twisted in knots as I listened to him. "What do you mean?" "There's a story that goes back decades," he began, glancing around as if making sure no one else was listening. "A young woman named Elizabeth checked in one winter night, just like you. She was alone, looking for a quiet place to rest. They say she started hearing whispers too, but she didn't leave. She became one with the hotel. And now she's the one who whispers." I felt a chill run through me. "Is that what I saw? Her?" The old man nodded solemnly. "Some say she's trapped in that room, unable to move on. Her spirit lingers, searching for something, or someone, and it won't stop until it gets what it wants." I shook my head, trying to make sense of it all. "But why me? Why now?" "Maybe you were meant to hear her. Maybe she sensed something in you," he replied. "You must be careful, though. It's not just the hotel that's haunted. The energy of that room spreads, and it can follow you home." My heart sank at the thought. What should I do? Forget about it. Drive far away and never look back. That's the only way to escape its grip. He stood up, his expression grave. "Trust me, son. Sometimes ignorance is bliss." I thanked him and hurried back to my car, my mind racing with fear and confusion. The weight of his words pressed down on me. As I drove away, I couldn't help but glance in the rearview mirror, half expecting to see something lurking behind me. But all I saw was darkness. Days passed, but I couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. I returned home to New York City, but the whispers from that room echoed in my mind, and sometimes late at night, I swore I could hear a faint voice calling my name. I tried to convince myself it was just my imagination, but deep down, I knew there was something more. Could Elizabeth's spirit have followed me? I had to find out. I began to research the hotel, digging through online forums and local news articles. What I found sent chills down my spine. Stories of guests disappearing without a trace, tales of strange occurrences and unexplainable phenomena. One article mentioned a man named David, who had checked into room 217 just a few months before I did. He had reported seeing shadows moving in the corners of his vision, feeling cold spots throughout the room. David had vanished the next day. Desperate for answers, I decided to reach out to a local paranormal investigation group. I needed to know if what I experienced was real or just a figment of my imagination. They agreed to meet with me, and soon I found myself in a small, dimly lit coffee shop, surrounded by a group of enthusiastic ghost hunters. Their leader, a woman named Laura, was particularly interested in my story. "We've heard rumors about room 217, she said, her eyes sparkling with excitement. "We're planning an investigation there this weekend. Would you like to join us?" The thought of returning to that hotel filled me with dread, but I couldn't resist the urge to confront my fears. "Yes, I'll come," I said, determination creeping in despite the fear. That Saturday night, I found myself back at the Evergreen Hotel, the air thick with tension. The group gathered in the lobby, equipped with cameras, audio recorders, and EMF detectors. Laura led us to the second floor, where room 217 awaited. As we approached the door, the atmosphere grew heavier, almost suffocating. I felt the weight of unseen eyes watching us. Laura knocked lightly, and after a moment we entered. The room was dark, and I could feel the memories of my previous visit flooding back. I could almost hear the whispers again, wrapping around me like a shroud. The group set up their equipment, and I stood back, feeling an overwhelming sense of dread. "Let's start by trying to communicate," Laura suggested, turning on the spirit box, a device that scans radio frequencies to allow spirits to communicate. "If there's anyone here, please speak to us." We waited in silence, the only sound being the crackling of the device. Suddenly it began to pick up voices, faint at first, but then clearer. "Get out." The words sent shivers down my spine. I exchanged glances with the group, my heart racing. "Who are you?" Laura asked, her voice steady. "Elizabeth." The name hung in the air like a ghost. I felt a chill run down my spine as I processed the reality of it all. "Why are you here?" Laura pressed. "Help me." The desperation in the voice made my heart ache. "Elizabeth, what do you need?" Laura asked softly. "Set me free." Before I could comprehend what was happening, the temperature in the room plummeted. My breath became visible, and I could see the others reacting, looking around with wide eyes. Suddenly, the lights flickered violently, and I felt a force push against me. I stumbled backward, crashing into the dresser. The mirror shattered, glass flying everywhere. I looked up in horror to see the figure standing there again, its hollow eyes boring into mine. "Help me," it whispered. And in that moment, I realized that I had a choice to make. Could I help Elizabeth find peace? Or would I become another victim of the horror that lurked in room 217? The air crackled with tension as I faced the spectral figure of Elizabeth, her hollow eyes reflecting a mix of sorrow and desperation. The room felt like a pressure cooker, the fear wrapping around me like a vice. I could hear the frantic breaths of the others behind me, their voices hushed in disbelief. "Help me," she whispered again, and I could feel the weight of her pain pulling at my heart. My instincts screamed at me to run, to escape the suffocating dread of room 217, but something deeper within me urged me to stay. Was this the chance to end her suffering? "Elizabeth," I managed to say, my voice barely above a whisper. "What do you need from me? How can I help you?" The spirit stepped closer, her form flickering like a candle in the wind. "Set me free. Find the truth." "Find the truth," I repeated, feeling the urge to understand. What truth? A flicker of recognition crossed her face. The journal. It holds the key. Suddenly, I remembered the old man at the gas station, the way he had spoken about the history of the hotel. The journal, I whispered, piecing together the fragments of the story I had uncovered. Where is it? Hidden, she murmured, her voice barely audible. In the attic, beneath the floorboards. With determination coursing through my veins, I turned to Laura and the others. We need to go to the attic. She said there's a journal that can help her. They nodded, and together we made our way up the creaky staircase, the weight of dread pressing down on us with each step. When we reached the attic door, the air grew heavy with anticipation. I could feel Elizabeth's presence guiding me, urging me to uncover the truth. As we pushed open the door, the room was filled with dust and shadows, remnants of a time long past. Old furniture lay scattered, draped in sheets like forgotten memories. I knelt down, feeling around the floorboards, my heart racing with every creak. There, I exclaimed, spotting a loose board. With trembling hands, I pried it open, revealing a small, weathered journal. I lifted it carefully, feeling the energy pulsing from it, as if it had been waiting for this moment. As I opened the journal, the pages crumbled beneath my fingers, but the words were clear. Elizabeth's story unfolded before my eyes, her dreams, her fears, and the tragedy that had trapped her spirit in the hotel. She had been wronged, betrayed by someone she trusted, leaving her restless and seeking closure. "Elizabeth," I called out, feeling her presence surround me. "I have your journal. I know your story now." The room grew colder, and the figure of Elizabeth appeared beside me, her expression transforming from anguish to relief. "Thank you," she whispered, the weight of centuries lifting from her. "You've set me free." With that, a radiant light enveloped her, and I felt a warmth spreading through the room. The shadows that had haunted the hotel began to dissipate, the air becoming lighter, the oppressive feeling lifting. As Elizabeth's spirit faded, I felt a sense of peace wash over me. I had done it. I had helped her find closure. The others stood in awe, witnessing the transformation of the room. The once dark atmosphere was now filled with light and hope. "We need to leave now," Laura said, her voice steady but filled with emotion. As we exited the hotel, I looked back one last time, feeling a mix of relief and sadness. I had faced my fears, confronted the darkness, and helped a lost soul find peace. But a question lingered in my mind. What if there were more like her? What if the world was filled with untold stories waiting to be uncovered? In the days that followed, I couldn't shake the feeling that my encounter with Elizabeth had awakened something within me. I became obsessed with the idea of exploring more haunted places, uncovering forgotten tales, and helping spirits find their way. And so, I ask you, dear viewers, what would you do if you encountered a spirit seeking help? Would you have the courage to listen and help them find peace? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. And remember, sometimes the darkest places hold the greatest truths. Thank you for joining me on this chilling journey. Until next time, keep your lights on and your heart open to the whispers of the unknown.